Hi everybody, this is Liz from Sew A Lot Creative Sewing Centers in Lexington, Kentucky and Centerville, Ohio. And today I want to show you why I like the PFAFF Quilt Expression 720 sewing machine. It is actually, the Expression line has always been one of my favorite lines of machines. They're great stitching machines. They're very solid. They do a fantastic job. They give you some exposure to some decorative stitches, but they also have some really nice features on them. So this would be the top of the line for the quilt, for the Expression line currently, the 720. And it does have some upgrade features that the machines below it are missing out on. The first big feature, if you like this, is a knee lift. This machine has the option to use a knee lift. So that is an upgrade feature of this machine. This machine also has some specialty decorative stitch technique stitches that are only available on our top of the line machines that are really neat that I'm going to show you today. It then of course has the standard IDT feed system on it, and I will show you that as well. So let's explore a little bit of how great the Quilt Expression 720 machine is today. A nice feature of the PFAFF Quilt Expression 720 is this wide bed that is available on it. It's got nice height, wide bed, and nice lighting where you can really see what you're doing. It also has the ability to thread my needle for me. I just pull my thread over, push the needle threader down, swipe my thread through, and it pulls it back through. Then I just pull the loop right through the needle eye, which is very handy. The machine also has buttons that control the presser foot lifting. So right now I'm in neutral position. I can press the down button. I can then press the down button one more time and it will bring it up to a hover position so that when I have fabric under the machine foot, I can move that fabric around if I need to. I also have the ability to press the up button and then one step higher so that if I'm putting something heavy in there, I can actually get it under the presser foot. It drops the feed dogs for me and raises the presser foot to the highest spot. That way I can get the fabric I need in there. I also have a speed control on the button panel, as well as a needle down, an instant tie off, a pattern start, a stop start button, and built-in scissors so it will cut my upper and lower thread, which is very nice. I can remove my accessory tray so that I have the free arm available, and it's got a drop-in bobbin, which is very easy to input into the machine.
Customers often ask me why IDT is so important. And basically, I'm going to show you what it is today. This is your IDT, or your integrated dual tracking. And what it is it's a piece that we can engage or disengage, and it will work with a variety of our presser feet. This is why I have loved a PFAFF sewing machine for so long. IDT was first put on a PFAFF sewing machine in 1984, and we were the original company to have an integrated dual feed system. So it's pretty fantastic. Basically how it works is your feed dogs pop up for your needle plate. There they are. And then once this piece is engaged, it is actually going to feed from the top as well. See how it moves in unison, feeding and pulling with those feed dogs. So when we have our fabric in there, you're getting sandwiched from the top and the bottom. So you're getting a nice even feed on all those layers. This is why I love a PFAFF sewing machine. If we were to sew something like a nice flimsy tricot fabric, and if we were to sew it without the IDT engaged and just using the feed dogs like your standard sewing machine would have, we would lower our presser foot and sew along. And what would happen is it would sort of weave and pucker up a little bit. Press our thread cutters, and we'll cut our top and bottom thread and pull it out. And it didn't do poorly, but it sort of weaved that fabric up, making it sort of wavy. Now, if we just engage that, simply pull that piece down and engage that IDT system, we'll stick that under there, we'll press again, and it will feed that fabric through more smoothly and level. And you get a nice flat seam versus the first one where it was puckered and wavy. The other thing that's really nice about that is if I'm then, without having to alter any settings or anything else in the machine, I can very easily just put 3 layers of denim in there and it will feed through without any issues. I don't have to push or pull or force my fabric to feed through my machine. It'll do it for me. Then, if I fold my fabric up again into 9 layers of denim, I can stick it in there, press it down, and it will feed right over that 9 layers of denim without a hesitation. That's why we like a PFAFF sewing machine. The power and the perfection. It just does a fantastic job stitching.
Okay, the Quilt Expression 720 from PFAFF. The first thing I want to talk to you about is the nice size colored screen that it has. A nice big display that is a touch screen for all of your stitching information. If we touch that screen, the first thing that's going to pop up, because we just turned the machine on, is a straight stitch. It's going to give us our stitch width or needle position in this case, our stitch length, and our tension, which is a preset tension. It also is going to give us some information like which presser foot to use. These are the standard presser feet that come with the machine, and whether or not to have our IDT feed system engaged. The other thing that's nice about this machine is that it's got some sewing functions on it that aren't available on some of our other machines. When we click on our stitch menu button, we get our stitch categories that are available. There are so many stitches on this machine that, unlike the other PFAFF machines where we have them up on the lid, there are so many they will not fit on the lid. So here's our stitch categories, and we can scroll through our stitch categories, and it has 10 categories of stitches. Once we're in those stitch categories, we can then go into subcategories and it will pull all of the stitches up. We can also scroll through all of the menus to see all of the stitches available on this machine. The nice thing about this machine that I really enjoy is that when we do select a stitch, it will pull it up on the screen in real size. So we have a real idea as to what size that stitch is. And if we go in and adjust that stitch in any way, it will alter it on the screen so that we can see how it's going to look. The PFAFF Quilt Expression 720 has 428 decorative and utility stitches built into the machine. Some of those utility and decorative stitches that are built into the machine are known as maxi stitches. These maxi stitches are large size stitches that require your feed system to actually move left to right as well as front to back, so you can actually get a nice size stitch out. If you look at this stitch is 14 millimeters wide. Your standard PFAFF sewing machine is going to have a 9 millimeter stitch. When you get into your Viking machines, they're going to have a 7 millimeter stitch. So it's 14 millimeter stitch is a really wide stitch, and it's nice to be able to get that wide stitch on a machine at this price point. The PFAFF Quilt Expression 720 also has a variety of needle positions, 37 needle positions. So we can move that straight stitch 37 different positions on our machine. As we move it, it moves the actual needle, so that if we wanted to move our needle up close to something one way or the other, we have the ability to do that using maybe our zipper foot, or if for some reason we didn't have our 1/4 inch foot, which this machine actually comes with, you could adjust that needle position to get to the right seam width that you need it to be. This machine actually comes with 10 different accessory feet, as well as a straight stitch needle plate, which is fantastic for the free motion quilting or the straight stitch sewing. There's also a sensor in this machine that when you put that straight stitch needle plate on, it will actually switch the machine so that you cannot put a stitch wider than a straight stitch on there, so that you don't break your needles. It's a very handy little feature. Another fun feature of the PFAFF Quilt Expression 720 is the fact that it has a single stitch function in it. I can actually go into the machine, and if I have this stitch and I know that I only need so many of it, that I can click on it, click on the single stitch, and I can tell it exactly how many stitches to stitch out. Now, when I go to sew, it will only stitch out 3 stitches instead of repeating itself until I stop. I also have the ability that I can miter any stitch in the machine. I can miter at the beginning or the end, and I can adjust my miter points so that they are at different degrees and make those stitches finish just how I need them to finish. Another function in this menu is the patchwork function, which is this stitch or this icon right here. If I were to select that icon, what I would do is I would go ahead and stitch my row of stitches, and when I got to my stopping point, I would hit my reverse button. It would then tell the machine would know how long I just stitched that row of stitches, and from there on it would continue to stitch that same row of stitches in the same length that I stitched the first one on, which is really nice if I'm doing a project that requires the same stitching over and over and over again. Another great function of the Quilt Expression 720 from PFAFF is that I have the ability that once I've done all this altering and changing to a stitch, that if it's something I'm going to use more regularly, I can actually go into this little heart at the top and save it into my personal memories so that the next time I'm working on a project similar to that, I can still use the same stitch that I just created. Of the expression machines in the PFAFF line, the Quilt Expression 720 has some exclusive features that the other expression machines do not have. One, it has exclusive PFAFF stitch techniques, which are not available on the 710.
Another really super exciting feature of the PFAFF Quilt Expression 720 is that it has those exclusive stitch techniques. So if we go into the machine down here at the end, number 8 and number 9 is where we're going to find those exclusive stitch techniques. And when we go in here, ribbon stitches are very cool. Stacking stitches are very cool. Floating stitches are my absolute favorite decorative stitch ever made. They are the most functional decorative stitch you've ever seen. And basically how they work are, we're going to select our stitch, and when it stitches out, this is exactly how it's going to look. We're going to see a stitch, there's going to be a space, then another stitch and a space, and it's going to look like they are literally floating in between one another. Now, how a decorative stitch work or a floating stitch works is if we want to do it on a single layer, we're going to take a piece of fabric and we're going to fold it in half. We are going to put it on some tearaway stabilizer so that there's some foundation for that stitch. And then we can actually just use our start stop button, feed that fabric fold right down the center of the presser foot. Press our cutter. Now, what we have is a connected stitch all the way through. All we're going to do is open up that stitch, and now it simply looks like it's floating down the seam. It's an amazing stitch to use for quilt piecing. I like to use it a lot when piecing strips for a string quilt. It works really nice. It gives a nice effect, and it's a decorative stitch that you've actually used with a function, which I really love. Okay, another fun specialty technique that I love is a ribbon stitch, and the Quilt Expression 720 has ribbon stitches. So we're just going to go down, we're going to find the stitch techniques, and we're going to click on ribbon stitches. It actually has some single ribbon stitches, which are going to use one ribbon, and it also has some double ribbon stitches. And then finally it also has one triple ribbon stitch. So it has a little bit of all the ribbon stitches, singles, doubles, and triples. And we are going to do a single ribbon stitch today. So we're going to pick our single ribbon stitch. It pulls our stitch up for us on the screen. You see it's got like a gray stitch and a white stitch. The white stitch is what's going to end up being visible. The gray stitch is what's going to be hidden by the ribbon. And it's going to tell us we need stabilizer. It's going to tell us we need our 2A presser foot. We are not going to use our foot control for this stitch. We're actually going to use needle down and our start stop function. How a ribbon stitch works is you definitely want to draw a line down the center of the fabric that you're sewing on, and you're always going to start with your needle and your needle down position. It recommends you use a 2A foot for this. You could also use an open toe applique foot if you had one. It's not a foot that comes with the machine. It is an additional accessory foot. But how it's going to work is with the single ribbon stitches, you're going to start, the stitch is actually programmed to start and stop. So you do not want to use your foot control for this. You're going to use your start stop button. It's going to stitch the first sequence of the stitch out, and then it's going to stop. And it's going to raise that presser foot just enough for us to put our ribbon in. We're going to put the ribbon in the angle that it's stitched and up against the needle and press the start stop button again. And then all we're going to do is we're going to take that ribbon, flip it over back and forth, pressing the start stop button. And back the other way. Again, the angle that the straight stitch went. Then once you're at the end, you'll just use your scissors to cut. It will cut and pull that out, and there is a single ribbon stitch. It's so freaking cute. I love how adorable it is. Now you can see down here that it didn't quite, it's because when I pulled the ribbon, I probably didn't pull the ribbon tight enough. But isn't it neat? It's such a fun stitch technique, and it goes together so smoothly. I know anybody that loves to be creative and out of the box would love to have a ribbon stitch available on your machine. And this is the lowest model we have in our line that gives you the access to those specialty stitches like the floating stitches or the ribbon stitches.
I hope that you've enjoyed this little demonstration of why I love the Quilt Expression 720. It is a really fantastic machine, great for somebody that just wants a nice heavy-duty machine with access to a lot of upgrade features. If you've got any questions or you would like to see more about this model, please give us a call or stop in our store and we will be glad to show you more about it.